Hi, I'm Ruth Marchetti. Tonight we're going to be talking about care of creation. This might strike you as odd, but I actually like winter, well, most of it. But I've noticed over the past few years that there are fewer days when I can strap on my snowshoes or cross-country skis. When the snow does come, it doesn't last. The temperatures quickly cycle up and down. Are there things about the natural world that sadden you? Blue-green algae in your favorite lake, deer ticks in our wild places and our backyards, plastic bags stuck in trees and undergrowth. Pope Francis shares your concerns. In 2015, he released his much-anticipated encyclical on the environment, Laudato Si'. It was addressed to the whole world, signaling that environmental destruction is so big that we need to bring everyone to the table to solve it. The encyclical was greeted with great excitement. Presbyterians, Jews, Buddhists, Episcopalians, all were reading this lengthy letter from a Catholic leader, excited that the power of Catholicism would shift the world's attention to our dire situation, assuming that the Pope's message of both urgency and hope would mobilize and inspire faithful action. Initially, there were many study groups formed to learn about the encyclical. But the overwhelming response from Catholic and other faith traditions was non-engagement on this critical issue. Most Catholics continued to be unaware of the encyclical and of Catholic teaching on care for creation. For many people, even today, this issue is still seen as controversial and politically divisive. But in 2022, we can no longer pretend that the earth is not in crisis. Fires, floods, droughts, and ever more variable and intense weather makes it clear that the time for debate is long past. Pope Francis tells us in Laudato Si' that one cannot choose between caring for people and caring for the earth. A church that commits itself to the life and dignity of all humans must become part of the solution to climate change. All of life, including human life, is dependent on the systems of the earth for their well-being. This short video does a wonderful job of using Pope Francis' own words to summarize the document.
Pope Francis has written a letter addressed to every person on this planet, urging us all to protect the earth, our common home. In the letter, he says, "The earth is God's gift to us, full of beauty and wonder, where the fruits of the earth belong to everyone. But what we see today is that our common home has never been so hurt and mistreated as it has been in the last 200 years. We have developed at a greater speed than we could ever have imagined. We have treated the earth like it has an unlimited supply of resources, taking more than our fair share from most people on the planet, as well as future generations to come. We have stripped the earth of its natural forests, contaminated the earth's waters, its land, and its air. Plants and species are becoming extinct at an alarming rate. The earth, our home, is beginning to look more and more like an immense pile of filth. Our increasing use of polluting fossil fuels, especially coal, oil, and gas, is helping to drive climate change, which is one of the biggest challenges we face today. Climate change affects us all, but it is the poorest communities who suffer the most. We are now at crisis point, where the future of our common home is under threat. And despite this crisis, there seems to be no slowdown in the lifestyles of the rich nations. Enormous gaps between the rich and the poor continue to rise. Between those who are trapped in poverty with few or no resources, and those who are consuming and wasting at an ever-increasing rate, leaving a trail of waste and destruction. Our digital world is also polluting us with noise and distractions, stopping us from learning how to live wisely, to think deeply, and to love generously. Real relationships are replaced with virtual friendships, which we can choose to accept or reject, making us dissatisfied with true, deep relationships, or can give rise to a new sense of isolation. Yet, despite all of this, all is not lost. Young people demand change. Young people want to build a better future, which takes seriously the environmental crisis and the sufferings of the poor. So we can change. We can make a new start. To protect our common home, we need a common plan. The whole human family needs to work together so that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Our use of polluting fossil fuels also needs to be replaced without delay. And we need to stop treating the world's resources as an object for profit, with no thought on how our actions might affect the environment or future generations. So let's put love for the world and love for our neighbour into action by living together in harmony, listening to one another, caring for nature, and getting involved with society and politics. Let's undergo an eco-conversion in which we listen to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. This means taking seriously things like avoiding the use of plastic and paper, reducing water waste, separating rubbish, and using public transport as a part of our calling to protect creation. But more urgently, we need to slow down on how much we consume and throw away. We can find great joy and freedom in living simply, rather than always on the lookout for what we do not have. We are capable of these changes and making a new start. So let us make that start today. Signed, Pope Francis. Laudato Si, a letter from Pope Francis on care for our common home.
Here are some key points. First, Pope Francis makes it clear that the time for indecision and arguing about this issue is past. Climate change and its consequences are real, and humans are responsible for it. Second, we must acknowledge that the world's poor are currently and will be the most harmed by the effects of climate change and must be prioritized in our solutions. We can't choose between taking care of the poor or the environment. It is all interdependent. The loss of biodiversity is a threat to all of life on the planet, including humans. Air, soil, and water exist for the benefit of all and must be protected. The problem of pollution and climate change will not be solved unless we end our throwaway culture and excessive consumerism. Technology can be a blessing, but it can also dull our senses and separate us from intimate human interaction. We must remain spiritually centered. And we must always find a way to remain optimistic and hopeful. What does this mean for our sister parishes? Well, accepting that all is connected and that there are important environmental harms that go beyond climate change, there are a number of issues for parishes and their families to consider. Energy use, especially for buildings and transportation. Land use, including allocating for natural spaces, lawns, trees, and gardens, and the use of herbicides and pesticides. The plasticizing of our world means that the world's air, water, and soil have become increasingly polluted with microplastic particles, not only threatening sea life, but posing unknown threats to us all as we breathe, eat, and drink plastic. How can we reduce our use of plastics and other disposables? How can we reduce waste, eat lower on the food chain, and ensure that others don't go hungry? Ecological education and spirituality of being present to nature must be taught at all age levels. How can we engage in work already being accomplished in our community? There are many dedicated individuals and groups working on environmental issues, including in our own town. The world is already experiencing a surge of climate refugees. How can we be welcoming to people who come to our area seeking refuge from war, hunger, and persecution? Change will not be affected by people without hope. How can we support each other and foster the spirituality essential to remain a hopeful people? In our commitment to protect all life, how are our sister parishes called to respond? Thank you.